Gannon, Razor, Rowden, Thompson Raider.
All right, quorum being established. Could I get a show of hands from the audience on folks who are here to testify for 1075? Okay, and those who are here to testify for 1375? And those who are here to testify for 1391 and 1392? Okay. So I think that based on that, we're going to limit time to testify to 3 minutes. So if everyone could keep that in mind, we'll try to give a little flexibility to make sure everyone's able to complete their thoughts. But if we could keep testimony to 3 minutes, hopefully that will enable everyone to testify and then be able to finish the hearing before we have to go into session today. So with that, we'll begin with Senate Bill 1075. Senator Koenig, if you would like to come forward, please begin when ready.
Thank you, members of the committee. Senator Andrew Koenig from 15th District here to present Senate Bill 1075. This is dealing with college credit transfers. Currently in statute, there's when you go to a community college, there's 42 hours that has to transfer to a 4-year university. What we're trying to do is we're trying to raise that to 60 hours because typically when you go to a community college, you go for 2 years. And what we don't want is government paying twice, because we are subsidizing both the public university and the community college. But if those don't transfer, we're essentially paying double, and then we're also paying the student to pay more money to get their degree, potentially unnecessarily. There are instances where we have, if you're getting a biology degree at one public university versus another, they have different classes that they're requiring. And so if you don't know which university you're going to, you might not know which class to take. And so obviously this is only addressing public universities. So that's the whole point of the bill, is to hopefully save taxpayer dollars. And so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the bill sponsor from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for that. Oh, seeing one. Senator, please proceed.
Thank you, Senator. This may surprise you, but I really like this.
No. Good.
Okay.
Glad to hear it.
Further questions for the bill sponsor from the committee? Seeing none. First person here to testify in support for Senate Bill 1075. Please, all witnesses, make sure you fill out your witness cards and proceed when ready.
Thanks. Brian Milner, I'm the president of the Missouri Community College Association. I want to thank the senator for sponsoring this legislation. And just sort of quickly give you the background is a number of years ago, the state created Core 42 transfer block, which was designed to kind of improve the transfer of credits between community colleges and universities, community colleges, and any public institution in the state. And it has fared us pretty well. And there are a lot of instances where it works and where students can easily transfer, or more easily transfer, credits than they used to be able to do. What we found is that it needs some improvement, and we have had a number of situations where, say, a community college student who's on A+, takes a class at a community college thinking it's going to transfer toward their major. When they get to the university, and either it doesn't transfer for credit toward their degree, so it would be counted as an elective, or it doesn't count in the sequence of classes, so as a prereq for whatever the next course would be. So as the senator indicated, what we're trying to do is improve that process for students so that they're not sort of bamboozled when they take a class at one public institution and it doesn't transfer the way they think it should at another. After the hearing on our companion House bill, the universities and community colleges have started a pretty good dialogue about how to improve the language that's currently in this bill. One of the things that we're sort of still working out is whether that general ed or that core block should be 42 or 60 credit hours. But what we know and what we agree on is that if you start as, say, a biology major or a chemistry major or a business major, you should be able to take these 60 credit hours toward your undergraduate degree. Those 60 credit hours should earn you an associate degree, and then you should be able to transfer them to the university and have them count as you continue through your education. So we've got a couple other witnesses. I'll stay short on my time here. We've got a couple other witnesses who can give you some other specific examples, but we appreciate the Senator for bringing this bill forward. We are working with the universities to try to ensure that we have some common ground, and I think we've made some progress. I know they gave you some language as well that we're kind of tweaking and discussing, but we're pretty well on the same page, which is that the Core 42 could use some improvement, and that students who start with a plan should have a roadmap to finish their degree as quickly as possible and have their credits transfer between institutions.
Thank you for that testimony. Any questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none, thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
Further witnesses in support for Senate Bill 1075.
Good morning. Thanks for this opportunity. My name is Jeff Pittman. I'm Chancellor of St. Louis Community College, and the Senator spoke eloquently about what the purpose of the bill was. I'll only add that, you know, I'm kind of sitting in the seat on behalf of our students. We want to see our students get to completion as quickly as they can, if it's their desire to transfer, so they're not losing time and credits. Typically, when a community college student transfers, they often lose a semester. And have to take that semester over again with the current situation. And what's the challenging for them? We serve about 20,000 credit students a year, and our students transfer all over the state of Missouri to different institutions. And if the curriculum's different at each institution, it's very confusing. It's a maze for the students to figure out. So I believe we have the opportunity here in working with Koenig and Mizzou to create more of a common curriculum in such programs such as biology, chemistry, business, psychology, whatever the students are enrolled in, so they're not losing any time to completion. And one other example I'll give, it's a challenge for our students to be able to even take classes in their major. Continuing on with the idea of biology, because of the way some of the transfer requirements are, a lot of our students can't even take some basic biology classes while they're with us for fear of having to take them over again when they get to the university. I'll just say on behalf of our college and our students, 94% of our graduates leave with no student debt. So this is just about creating more affordable pathways for Missourians. So appreciate your time and your interest, and hope I'm very much in support of this bill.
Thank you for that testimony. Any questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none, thank you again for being here. Further witnesses to testify in support Senate Bill 1075.
Good morning. I'm Brent Bates. I'm president of State Fair Community College in Sedalia. Thank you to the Senator for sponsoring this legislation. State Fair Community College has a very good relationship with the universities in its service region, with University of Central Missouri and Lincoln University. We've established strong pathways. And the way it works is a student, if they start at State Fair and they know they're going to transfer to UCM, we connect a navigator from State Fair Community College with an advisor from UCM or Lincoln University, and they outline that clear pathway for that student. This system works very well if the student starts and knows exactly where they're going to go from the first day of their college career, and if the student doesn't change their mind about what major they're going to, and if the requirements don't change at the university. So those are three big ifs that complicate the structure. Many students don't come with a clear pathway in mind. Many of them are undecided, and they find their passion during their study. They may decide to go across the state to study, and those students end up being penalized. This is very personal for me. My granddaughter, I was privileged that she studied at State Fair Community College and graduated with Associate of Arts degree. She transferred to a public institution in the state, and hoping to start as a junior, and she started as a second semester sophomore. So she basically lost a semester of study in that transfer. So we have a system, but it's inefficient, not good for students. When we make decisions at State Fair, we think what's good for students, what's good for our community. I would say this bill is good for students. It's good for the state of Missouri. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for being here this morning. Any questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none. Next witness to testify in support, Senate Bill 1075.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm about to save you 2.5 minutes and say I'm Nancy Giddens on behalf of Metropolitan Community College. We'd like to go on record in support of the bill for all of the transfer efficiency points that have already been raised.
Thank you for that testimony. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you
sir.
again. Next witness testify in support, Senate Bill 1075.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Alex Eaton representing Ozarks Technical Community College, and we would like to go on record in support. Dr. Pittman, Dr. Bates, Mr. Milner, and Nancy did a great job explaining it, so appreciate the committee considering this.
Thank you for being here. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Next witness to testify in support, Senate Bill 1075.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, Brad Thielemeyer, registered lobbyist for Three Rivers College in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. Just want to go on record in support.
Thank you for that. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Any other witnesses testify in support for Senate Bill 1075? Seeing none. Any witnesses here testify in opposition to Senate Bill 1075? Please come forward and proceed when ready.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Paul Wagner. I'm the Executive Director of the Council on Public Higher Education, representing all of our regional universities and state technical college. So first of all, there's not really anything that's been said to this point that I would disagree with. We have a lot of common ground on this issue. The reason I'm testifying in opposition is because the bill as written, I think is counterproductive to what has been discussed. I've had a conversation with the sponsor and conversations with my community college counterparts, and I think there's a lot of common ground. So what the bill does is it takes the current 42-hour gen ed core and makes it 60 hours. So in effect, you have to take more gen eds, and I don't think that's what anybody here is talking about. We're talking about improving transfer of courses beyond general education that students take at community colleges and then want to bring to a university. So that's kind of the reason I have to be in opposition. Now, generally speaking, as Dr. Bates touched on, there are two types of students who are getting their associate's degree or go beyond the 42 hours at a community college. Students who know what they want to major in, and students that aren't sure yet. For the students that aren't sure yet, they might dabble around in different fields trying to find one interest in. Maybe they'll take a business class or an ag class or a health class and try to find, as he said, their passion. That's where you're often, just like if you're a native student, if you started at a university and you're dabbling around, you're going to lose credit hours when you eventually decide, okay, I want to take an ag class. Well, your intro to nursing is not going to help you get closer to your ag degree, even though it was just part of your journey to take those courses. So in the case of the other kind of student who knows what they want to do, I know I want to get a bachelor's degree in business, and I'm at St. Louis Community College. Absolutely, there's lots of work that can be done in order to improve those pathways so that those students don't lose credit hours when they transfer. And I've drafted language to that effect. I've shared it with Senator Koenig's office. I've shared it with my community college counterparts, and as they've alluded to, I think we're pretty close to having some real solid compromise language that I think we can move forward with. So I'll just leave it at that, and happy to answer any questions.
So I correctly understand that only the expansion of the core credit hours from 42 to 60, that is the core of your opposition. That if that were addressed, then you would be good with the rest of the bill.
Well, yeah, well, for sure, we're not going to favor expanding gen ed requirements. The whole point of getting the core 42 was to reduce the number of gen ed requirements, so we're reducing the overall number of credit hours needed to get your degree. So expanding gen ed is the opposite direction. So taking that out would be one thing, but also having language that actually does accomplish what we're talking about here, which is more seamless transfer of the courses in between 42 and 60, so to speak. So as I mentioned, I've drafted that, shared it with all the interested parties, and I think we've got a lot of common ground.
All right, thank you for that testimony. Any questions from the committee for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here this morning. Additional witnesses to testify in opposition, Senate Bill 1075. Seeing none, are any witnesses here to testify for informational purposes only? Seeing none, that will conclude the public hearing on Senate Bill 1075. Would the sponsor like any final words?
Yeah, I'll be working with both parties to see if we can come up with some compromise language. So we'll get that to you as soon as we do.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Next, we'll have a public hearing for Senate Bill 1375.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Carla Eslinger, representing the 33rd Senatorial District, and I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to present Senate Bill 1375, an act that's relating to student enrollment in the Missouri Course Access and Virtual School programs. If this bill sounds familiar, it's because some of you have heard this bill earlier this year in the Senate Education Committee as Senate Bill 780. In 2022, the Missouri General Assembly had truly agreed and finally passed House Bill 1552. And that would provide other education opportunities for students that aim to make other education opportunities for Missouri students, and it aimed to make this program run more efficiently. Senate Bill 1375 really focuses on two main aspects of current law: clarification of how virtual programs are funded, and clarifying that the determining process for enrolling a full-time virtual program belongs to the host district and not DESE. First, the legislation provides clarity on the funding process, and you're going to see in statute Section 2, subsection 1, that it clarifies that the estimated attendance for purposes of calculating ADA for virtual school programs will be set at the host district's prior year ADA, and that the allocations will be in monthly state allocation. And I think it's important to note that virtual programs when the General Assembly made changes for this process in House Bill 1552, DESE went through a rulemaking process, and those rules were basically or eventually thrown out by the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules because they found them to be a bit burdensome and confusing. So like many of you have heard me say before, whether it's virtual or charter or public or private, we need to make sure our schools are running as efficiently as possible and always putting our students' needs first. I believe Senate Bill 1375 to be a step in that direction, into making the virtual education system established by statute to be better for Missouri students. And I know we have several stakeholder groups and expert witnesses here with us today that could help explain any other details that you would have a question about. I might have missed, but thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Any questions for the bill sponsor from the committee? Seeing none. First witness here to testify in support, Senate Bill 1375.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Otto Fajan on behalf of Missouri NEA. We'd like to speak in favor of Senate Bill 1375. If this sounds familiar to you, last year a very similar piece of legislation came through the House 136-0 and was brought over to the Senate and was considered in the Education Committee. That bill didn't ultimately pass all the way through, and so similar legislation is coming back. Just by way of review, you all passed back in 2018 changes that created the MOCAP program. That was designed primarily by its sponsor as a course access model, but full-time provisions were included to allow that access, but not really a separate structure. That's what the legislation that was passed in 1552 sought to do, and it has largely done that. There are a couple of technical issues the sponsor's done a great job of describing that still need to be remedied, and that's what this bill is designed to do. And our hope is that the committee and the legislature ultimately will pass it and clarify those few remaining issues. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Appreciate that testimony. Questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you
Mr.
again
Chairman.
for being here. Further witnesses testifying in support Senate Bill 1375.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Brent Hemphill. I'm here on behalf of Connections Academy, also known as Pearson. We have a district partner in Sturgeon and run a school of approximately 600 to 700 full-time kids. We've been engaged in this process for several years. Autophagian did a very good job of describing the legislation. This is purely technical in nature. There's no substantive changes other than to help parents streamline their kids into a full-time option. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Further witnesses testify in support. Please proceed when ready.
Good morning. Kate Casas, registered lobbyist, here on behalf of Excel, just another virtual provider in the state. Just want to go on record in support for reasons already stated.
Thank you for that testimony. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you again. Further witnesses here to testify in support? Seeing none. Are there any witnesses here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 1375? Seeing none. Are there any witnesses here to testify for informational purposes only? Seeing none. Would the bill sponsor like any final words? All right, that will conclude the public hearing on Senate Bill 1375. Could I get a show of hands one more time who's here to testify on the next two bills? Okay. If we could wait just one moment here, I believe the bill sponsor for 1391 is on it. Oh, he's right here. Oh, okay. Well, you blended right into the audience. All right, we are all here, so we will next hear Senate Bills 1391 and 1392, and I will turn the committee over to Senator Coleman while we do that.
Thank you, Senators. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Curtis Trent, representing Senate District 20. This is a bill that mirrors a bill that is actually has already moved to the floor, and so will not belabor my presentation here this morning so that we can get to witness testimony. This is Senate Bill 1392, Education Savings Accounts. So the major changes that I think are important to highlight is that it increases the cap from $50 million to $75 million with an annual adjustment for inflation. The funding will now include refundable tax credits. Third, there's an attempt to create parity between what a student receives when they go to a public school versus what they receive through an education savings account. So, for example, someone who has an individualized education plan would receive the same 175% of basic state adequacy target, limited English language 160%, free and reduced lunch 125%. All other students would receive that basic state adequacy target. It removes any background check for homeschool students. And it also expands charter eligibility to St. Louis County, Boone County, and St. Charles County. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and also, I guess, turn it over to my co-sponsor here.
For the record, Tony Luetkemeyer representing the 34th Senatorial District. Ditto with what the chairman just said.
Any questions for the bill sponsors? Senators, can you just really quickly repeat it? It's Boone, which counties?
Boone, St. Louis, and St. Charles.
Thank you so much. First witness in support, please come forward. And I'm sorry, when the chairman was asking for a show of hands, I wasn't paying very good attention because I didn't realize I was going to be taking over. Just want to quickly check and see how much time each person has. So if you could raise your hands if you're planning on testifying. Okay, I think we're going to be fine. If everybody could kind of try to just limit your, we've got about 15 people who want to testify. Math was certainly never my best subject, but I think if everybody sticks to around 5-ish minutes, we should have plenty of time. So thank you, sir. Go ahead and when we're ready.
My name is Pastor Shannon Miller from Summit Christian Academy in Lee Summit, Missouri. I am the Director of Resource Services, i.e. Special Education, and I work with parents one-on-one to help onboard them into our program. This bill will help empower our families to make incredible decisions for their kids. I work with families that right now they just don't simply qualify as it stands. They don't live in the right county, or they make a little too much money, or they just, the parameters are just so tight that they can't find a way to make it work for their families. So what happens is they don't give up on their kids' education. No, they really believe in Christian education. They believe that our school supports their core values. So instead, what do? They take out a second mortgage on their house. They sell everything they own. They take a second and a third job to try to get their kids the help they need. Because it doesn't just affect regular students, the majority of kids. It pinpoints a specific group of people that are struggling just to get by in school. Those are the weakest of us that need the most help. The kids that can't read. That's expensive services to provide, and this bill can help fix that cost for those families. So I cry out to you guys and beg you, please support us in this endeavor to bring a fantastic education to kids and families who their core values aren't being reflected in the public school system.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for this witness? Senator Gannon?
Yes, can you tell me what accountability your school has that you're referring to? Do they take the same tests that public school students take every year?
We take a series of tests. We take the ACTs, right?
No, I want to know accountability. Do they take the same test that public school students have to take every year?
No, we meet the criteria that's set for private schools.
So then you're wanting state funding from public schools to go towards your school, is that correct?
I think
yes or no? It's okay. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. But you're not. You want funding from taken away from public schools, but you don't want to be accountable like public schools. So I'm having trouble with that part right there. I don't. Everybody is sitting in this room knows that I'm a public school advocate. I taught school 32 amazing, wonderful years. and I support my schools in my district, and I vote my district. And so I'm having trouble with this, and so I cannot support this bill.
I taught for public schools for over a decade and loved many of those years. Yet I came to the point where public schools no longer reflected my personal core values.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. But the people that go to your school, your church school, is that correct?
No, we're an interdenominational school.
Well,
we
that's
have about 120 kids per grade.
well, interdenominational is basically a faith-based school, right?
Sure.
And that's fine. I don't have a problem with those schools. I really don't. But they should be accountable. And people that want, families that want to send their children to those schools, you know, in our Constitution, we provide public school education. And if you choose not to take the free public school education, then, you know, you should financially, parents should financially take care of sending their kids to a private school or, you know, homeschooling. I think homeschooling's great, especially if it's done right.
Do they take the same tests as?
Can you answer that? Do they take accountability test, homeschoolers?
No.
No. Thank you, Senator, for your questions of this witness. Senator Beck, did you have?
So, anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I think there's an inherent flaw in the response, though, because it's not free. It's not free education. We pay for it.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Senator Beck.
Good morning.
I'm so sorry. I just was wanting to make sure that we got to Senator
right.
Beck's questions, not excusing you. Thank you, sir.
Sorry. You said your school, you're in Lee Summit?
Yeah.
So you basically fall within the footprint of the current voucher program?
Yeah, we do.
You do.
Some of our families do, but we have families from all over. We have families that drive an hour just to get to school.
So are you, do you have kids now that are in the voucher program?
We have some, yeah.
You do? And were they in your school before the voucher program?
A lot of our kids are utilizing voucher program are new students that
Are there some that were in your school before?
There are some, yeah.
So what's the percentage of the ones that were already in decided to make that choice to do a private school, and I'm fine with that, and then now they're on basically the taxpayer dollars of everybody in the state?
How many?
Yeah.
There are 4.
There's 4, and how many that are new?
3 are new.
3 are new. So you have more that were there before. So you have 7 kids total that are in the school, but actually 4 of them already were at your school before, but now they're using public funds to do that. And what was their criteria to be able to come in? So I'm assuming they had some sort of ISP?
Yeah, they have an ISP. In order to qualify for the program, they would need either an existing IEP or they would need an existing diagnosis from a professional
right.
in the field.
And then that throws out every other requirement, except for you have to live in. The only really true requirement is you have to live within that charter county.
Yeah, those counties.
But however, if you have an ISP, it throws out the income levels, it throws out all those other things.
If you have a current ISP?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not for sure on that.
Yeah. So, but I'm assuming, do we know if those kids do they qualify income-wise too, you're saying? Or I'm assuming they didn't because they were there before?
Most of the kids that apply don't qualify.
Right.
For income-wise.
So
they don't qualify from where they live either.
Well, and I'm not trying to call anybody out, but we'll look at just the 4 kids that were in your school prior. I'm assuming they were financially okay to have their kids in the school. So I'm assuming they're probably above the 200 or 400% of or whatever, 200% of free and reduced. So I guess what I'm getting at here is we're subsidizing kids, families that wanted to send their kid, and that's fine. You want to send your kid to a private school, but now we're subsidizing them with public dollars to get a religious education, which I find not right. And I have nothing against religion or spiritual or whatever you want to be, but now you're taking public dollars and you're doing that, and we don't know what the curriculum is. The accountability aspect. You might have the greatest school, sir, in the world. I don't know, but that's the question is I don't know.
Well, I think there's a misunderstanding here with taking public money, taking public tax dollars. The people that send their kids to these schools are part of that public. You're just reflecting the demographics that you serve. We all pay taxes, and these parents pay a significant amount of taxes. And so it's like it's a double whammy. We pay the taxes and we also pay the tuition, if that makes sense. And for kids with special needs, that tuition is not just a set rate. With every new need that they have, it costs more and more money to provide, obviously.
So your tuition is above and beyond what you get in a voucher? They have to pay extra money also?
Sure, yeah. I mean, there are some kids that require services that are well over the voucher parameters. So if a student comes in with a significant reading disability, and we've got a therapy program that costs $4,000, well, there's a big chunk of your voucher money right there.
So when you take the voucher money, you not only do you have the voucher money doesn't cover the education, now you're saying that they have to come get money out of pocket. So this truly would limit, like, people that would be in free and reduced lunch would not be able to go to your school. So can they go in your school just on a voucher program?
Can they go in my school just on a voucher? No, it does not cover.
So they have to pay extra?
Entirely, yeah.
That's interesting. So you don't take everybody then. You wouldn't take somebody that's a free and reduced lunch that could not afford the other part of their tuition.
If their parents can't afford the tuition,
that's good enough for me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next witness in support.
Members of the committee, my name is Zachary Harnden. I'm a student at Simpson College, which is a small private college in southern Iowa, and I'm here on behalf of students like myself as a product of school choice and specifically tax credit scholarships. And so my story really begins with my parents, who lived in a small town in northwest Iowa. We're both products of public school, really enjoyed it, had great experiences. And when they moved to the big city, as they like to call it, they knew they wanted a faith-based education for me. And they didn't really know how they were going to afford it or how they were going to pay for it. But they just knew they were going to make it work and hoped that it would work out. And so they did that. My dad took on second jobs at night to pay for it. Things were pretty tight around the house, and ultimately they made it happen. And then when it came time for high school, you know how Catholics are. 4 kids later, things got even more tight, and so obviously there's an increase in tuition with high school, and it didn't look like I was going to be able to continue the success that I'd had built on in K through 8. I joined the debate team, ended up doing really well, and I wanted to continue that into high school, but the local public high school didn't have forensics or any type of public speaking. And so ultimately I applied for a local scholarship without my parents knowing, which they were just so happy about, and got it, and they saw the initiative that I took and decided to apply for the local tax credit scholarship through the Catholic Tuition Organization. And ultimately, I got to go to my local Catholic high school, continued my debate experience, and now I'm on scholarship for debate in college. And none of that would have happened if I didn't have the opportunity to use these school choice programs. And so I would just ask that you support the bill because it can really make a big impact on the lives of students like myself. So I'll use the rest of my time.
Thank you so much for being here and for your testimony. Are there any questions for this witness? Thank you for traveling here today.
Thanks.
Next witness in support.
My name is Max Victor. I am testifying in support of Senate Bill 1391 and the expansion of most scholars. I'm a principal of a private Christian school in Columbia, Missouri. My story begins as a refugee from Ukraine. You may have heard of that. And as a young boy, the only education that my family had access to was the public school system in the state of Illinois. It was Chicago. Now, years later, I have the privilege of serving as a school leader here in central Missouri. And I choose private school for similar reasons that many of our families choose private school, because we want to support a faith-based education for the next generation. And we believe that the way that we do things and the education that we offer is a great option for many families that they deserve to be able to choose. I don't know how it plays out in many other schools, and at least in our case, we're one of the top participants in the Most Scholars program through one of the EAOs. And I would say the majority of our students, as over 30 by now who are Most Scholars students, the majority joined us at the same time that they received the scholarship for the first time. And so whether or not they could have afforded it previously, I don't know. I do know that our families make great sacrifices to be able to access the education that they believe is the best for their child. They drive different vehicles just so they could afford it. They make housing decisions so they can afford it. One of the significant factors is the actual where the housing is located, as you know, per the law. Currently, we've had families that are refugee families that are just like me, that have been so blessed by this program to be able to access an excellent education that aligns with their values. We have families from Southeast Asia that are refugees. We have Rwandan refugees. They're all part of church communities, and they participate in our educational program. Some of these families have made housing decisions outside of Columbia, thereby no longer qualifying for the program. And so these are families who now you have to make a very difficult decision whether they can afford the tuition. I understand that the program may only cover a portion of a typical tuition. I'm sorry, but that's just what it costs to educate a child in the current day if you're going to do it right, and to be able to have a competitive pay rate for your personnel. And so for us, we're in support of families being able to live outside of Columbia or outside of whatever municipality to be able to make that decision, because they're contributing by participating in our program. Our church subsidizes a significant amount. We give away $300,000 of foregoing revenue each and every year with our tuition assistance program, which is subtractive. That's in addition to the Most Scholars. The Most Scholars creates an actual revenue for us to be able to support our operations. And so I would encourage everybody to consider the families that may have to live outside of the city. Additionally, within the city of Columbia, we've seen a rise in the diversity of our student population since the start of this program. I believe that families who otherwise may not have considered a private education, there's a door that's open for them now. And so I just want to share a little bit about their stories as well. These are families who might be very limited in a lot of different options in their lives based on where they reside and based on what schooling they have access to. Not every school is equal within a district, as you know. And so for a child to have access to a really great education, you just consider the trajectory shift for that life that they potentially are having. We might not see the fruits of that education until decades later, but I believe that access to that education is a complete game changer for many of those families and for those students. And I think that those kids are worth it, and those parents deserve to have that choice.
Sir, can I ask a quick question about accountability? When your parents feel that the school is not adequately meeting the needs of their children, they just simply stop attending. Isn't that correct? So you're directly accountable to the parents who make a decision about whether they send their child there or not. Isn't that accurate?
Regarding whether they send their child, correct. We have the enrollment decision, and that's between us and the family. We are a fully accredited school, and so there are higher powers that oversee our school operations. In 3 weeks, we're having our review for our accrediting body.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Senator Carter.
What process do you go through for your accreditation?
We're accredited through Oral Roberts University Education Fellowship, International Christian Accrediting Agency. That involves a significant school, similar to a school improvement cycle. There's a series of standards that are the same. We're actually dual accredited with Cognia, which is the same accrediting model that is used, I believe, in most of the public schools around here. And so we just have a faith-based addition to it, but we have the same standard of excellent rigor that's covered. We produce artifacts and documents, significant a school-wide effort to be able to prove that we are an excellent school that has a seat at the table. We also host a visit that's coming up, as I mentioned. We pull data like any other school. As a head of school, I'm a building principal by day, and I'm a tiny superintendent by night, because I have to also treat our private school like its own school district, and make sure that our families have, as taxpayers, have access to all the programs that that they would in a public school, and then some.
So I appreciate your work for your school. I think what's unfortunate, I was a mom who drove 45 miles one way for my kids to be able to attend a private school. I also had a son with special needs who would not have been able to attend to that private school. What I think is unfortunate oftentimes is that we have parents who cannot speak to the culture of their local community with their taxpayer dollars. I would love to work with the bill sponsor to try to also give this flexibility to our public schools so that they can be third-party accredited and also meet the needs of those students who love their schools and live within those communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Senator Beck.
Thank you. I just want to clarify. Every time I ask a question, everybody was
I think my transitions are bad. When I say thank you to one senator, everyone thinks I'm dismissing
I feel like
witness.
I'm at home.
That's not my intention.
I feel like I'm at home. All right.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. So I want to clarify the question that the chairwoman asked you. You said you can choose who goes to your school. Is this correct?
That is correct.
So you pick and choose who goes to your school.
We have an admissions criteria.
So by school choice, you're saying you get to choose the students, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Second question I want to ask you. You mentioned earlier, and you probably don't have this data, but if you do, I would really love to see it. You said you believe the majority of the kids going to your school were not in your school previously due to the voucher program.
That's not the case. That's not what I said. I'm sorry. The majority of the students of the 29 or so that are participating,
Yes.
30 or so that are participating.
Maybe I phrased my question wrong. So the 29 that you have that are participating in the voucher program, you mentioned that you believe the majority of those are new to the school and they didn't go to your private school before.
Yeah, that's correct.
So do you have that number? What that number is?
I'm sorry, not off the top of my head. It's right around half or more than half.
Could you provide that to me? Because I can't get any information from the treasurer's office because of the accountability. I've tried. They send me screenshots of websites, and it's been the transparency issue has been really troublesome to me. You know,
Okay.
I really want to see kids get an education, but I also don't want to see our money being taken away from public education, where actually they don't choose which students they get to educate. So, but if you could get that information to me, that would be great. Now, a lot of these kids that you have, these 29 kids, are the vast majority of those on ISPs?
No.
They're not.
No, there's a handful that are, but the majority are qualifying based on the other criteria that exist with the program.
Okay, so yeah, I would really love the information on the kids that you have, just the 29. No names, no, I don't want to get into that, but of exactly what criteria it is that they had to achieve to come to your school for you to choose them and decide if they were going to participate or not. Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next witness in support.
Kate Casas, registered lobbyist here on behalf of the American Federation for Children. Just want to go on record in support and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Next witness in support.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Becky Lohman, registered lobbyist for Yes Every Kid and Missouri Century Foundation, want to go on record in support.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Next witness in support, please come forward.
Good morning, Senate Committee. This is Curtis Wickmer representing the Missouri Catholic Conference. I would just like to go on record in support of this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone here have any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Next witness in support. Last call. Anyone in support? Witnesses in opposition?
you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Mike Lodewigan on behalf of the Missouri Council of School Administrators. Go on record opposed to the bill. I think, as I've said in the previous Education Committee, and I've not yet been able to talk to this one yet, I think this school choice conversation is an interesting one, and as we look forward, look down the road, we would be foolish to not think that maybe at some point this is going to happen. There's been a number of states that have done it. If that is the case, and we start looking into what we need, what that system ultimately needs to look like, I think from our perspective, public schools need every opportunity to be able to compete with schools that don't have the same sort of accountability system that we do. We have a system right now that quite frankly, no one understands. The legislature doesn't understand it. Parents don't understand it. Schools don't understand it. It changes every year. It is, in my mind, the number one reason why teachers are leaving the profession, because we have an over-reliance on standardized testing. And if we are going to have a system that stacks the deck against public schools as we move into the system, it is not a true market. And so if we're going to have that market down the road, we need to have equal accountability models and free public schools to be able to compete with those other schools. And so as we move into this, I think that's one of the most important conversations we can be having, because at the end of the day, even in states that have massive school choice programs, the overwhelming majority of students are still enrolled at their local traditional public school. And so what are we going to do to assist those school districts to help provide the education that's necessary for our students? And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony, Senator Carter.
Can you talk to me a little bit about how do you get to choose your accreditation? How you're accredited?
No, ma'am. No, Senator.
So what's the difference between the ESA accreditation model and the models that were spoken to here just prior to your testimony and what you have to do?
So we have MSIP 6, which is an accountability system that the state has created. It's been around for years. It's changed 6 times now. That system creates a reliance on our state MAP test to essentially provide us with all of the information that we use to evaluate school quality in the state of Missouri. And so we have APR scores that come out at various times throughout the year, depending on the year, that people make inferences regarding how good that school or school district is performing. But when you start digging into that system, you start seeing a system that, quite frankly, doesn't give a whole view of what's going on. And we can go back to there are multiple pieces of that we can point to, but the number one piece is the MAP test. When we have a MAP test that's given at the end of the year, after all of the education's gone on, it is not necessarily important to students, and so that gets plugged into our MSIP 6 APR scores, and then it spits out a number. I would argue that the type of accreditation that is going on in these other schools is much more meaningful because it gives real-time feedback. It allows you to meet school districts and communities where they are at and lets the community have more say into what they want to focus on. Additionally, when you start looking at assessment, the type of assessments that school districts are using around the state provide immediate feedback to teachers that can be aligned to standards, that give quality information to parents, students, and the teachers so that they can focus their instruction to make sure that students are getting served. Those are the type of assessments that we are using right now. Those assessments are not a part of our state accreditation system. I would argue that is one of the most important moves that we can be able to make as we move into this system, because that's honestly what these other schools are also providing. So how can we move that system to serve our kids now, regardless of what happens with choice? That is something that we need to do now, in my mind.
So you're not necessarily averse to this flexibility that they're speaking to, but you're also seeking that flexibility within the public education sector.
Yeah, because looking down the road, we have to have, if this is going to be a meaningful program, the comparison, parents are going to want accurate information about how all schools are doing. And so they need to make an informed choice if that's what we're going to do. And so having similar evaluations of school quality, I think, is an important factor for parents to make the right decision for their students.
And so currently right now you have private schools, parochial schools, using third-party accreditation. So if you were to shift public education to a third-party accreditation, it is actually more apples to apples comparison.
For accreditation, I mean, separating accreditation and accountability, I think, is the more important piece. The accreditation aspect of it is true school improvement that allows more community buy-in and input to the process than the system that we have now.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, follow-up for you right now. You talk a lot about accreditation and accountability, and I appreciate that, but if a parent does not like the results that they're seeing from the schools that you represent, what can the parent do to go anywhere else?
Well,
nothing, right? They can't leave. So there is no accountability for the school. You lose no funding, and the student cannot leave the system unless their parents can find private dollars. So this idea that you have accountability or information when there is no option for parents to leave is, I mean, listen, I think that's a little bit silly, right? You oppose open enrollment. You oppose ESA programs. You oppose any kind of accountability that results in the parent making a decision. So you are trapping taxpayers in failing schools. So I agree with you that we have too much restrictions on our public education system, but the solution is not to just trap kids in a failing system. The solution is to let parents pick something else. So thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it for being here. Senator Razor.
Help me understand this, because I've been on the education committee for a while, and I've heard over and over about accountability, and we've talked about accountability until I've lost all my hair. And now I'm hearing we want no accountability. So if public tax dollars are going to a private institution, what accountability do we have over them to know that those kids are getting educated?
Currently, there are some parameters around the ESA program that was passed when I was not working on this issue, so I'm not totally familiar with what those are. Maybe the sponsor can discuss those, but there are some. But as far as apples to apples comparison, there is not.
What about for homeschool students?
I think we have a fairly lax homeschool law in the state.
I think we're not allowed to do anything. Do those kids have rights to be educated?
That's a question you have to ask for them.
I mean, the Missouri Constitution says yes through public schools. That's the point of those tax dollars for education, is to make sure we can maintain our republic. That's what the Missouri Constitution says. And I guess I question, I don't know why I'm asking this to you, I'm just sitting here thinking about it. But what happens when a family, let's say a family, their option out of the public school is a local, we just had someone from Catholic Charities, a Catholic school, which there's many in my district, fine schools. They go there and they are taught that the Pope is the vicar of Christ on earth. And the kid comes home and says that to their Baptist parents, who then come to me and say, tell them to stop saying that. What do I do? It's public taxpayer dollars at a religious institution.
Well, we had a situation last year where we had a long discussion about Parents' Bill of Rights, CRT, DEI, and thinking down the road to this concept of more taxpayer dollars going to fund private schools. The Senate, I think, passed the bill on Thursday that day. Friday evening, there was a news story in St. Louis where there was a Catholic school. It was during February, where the school was being criticized because to celebrate Black History Month, the white students in the class, the exercise that they used was to free the two black students. And so if you look at that CRT bill, where that was at that time, you had language in there that said no one class of students should be treated differently based on the color of their skin. That's where the negotiation of the Senate was. Now, that bill didn't end up passing, but to go down this path, that school participated in the ESA program. But to your point, Senator, the more money that goes to these other schools, those sort of conversations are going to happen. It may not be right now. It may be 5 years from now. It may be 10 years from now. And that's what you're seeing in other states. States that have these massive school choice programs, the politics change. And then all of a sudden, there's now an interest in taxpayer accountability to make sure that the schools are regulated and taxpayers are getting what they're being asked to pay for. Because to your point, constitutionally, we have a right to provide free and public education. Well, there is this interpretation that the idea that the money follows the kid. Education is education. We give the money to the student. They go to the school, and that's public education. Well, that has connotations down the road as these sort of things happen. And so I think we just need to keep that in mind when we're talking about this topic. Is there's really two ways that you can go. You can either free public schools to be able to compete with this, or you can put the same restrictions on those other schools as well. And there's really not another way to go.
I agree. I'm very worried about our influence over religious institutions. We should have none. Thomas Jefferson said there will forever be a wall of separation between the church and the state. And that's a wall we should build. I just see 1,000 scenarios where this goes wrong. I grew up in a church that didn't believe you should have instrumental music. Well, that's going to go over real well when I tell little Sally that she's going to hell for singing with a piano. I'm worried we had the school in Columbia is accredited through Oral Roberts somehow. They don't like me very much. I can't imagine me and my husband would get a warm welcome from Oral Roberts. And of the schools that currently get funding, I know Columbia, I know Kansas City, I'm sure St. Louis has a Muslim school. They didn't qualify. And the governor said in his speech that we should respect public, charter, private, and Christian schools.
And that conversation cuts both ways, Senator. If you go back and listen to the testimony in the Education Committee in this room regarding the CRT DEI language, there were, for those of you that were on the Education Committee, we had 20 to 30 students from private schools that came up to testify against those bills. The testimony and listening to that was astonishing to me, because the testimony was, we're being taught this. We need our public school brethren to be taught the exact same sort of history, right? So it's not just on the religious side; it cuts on both sides of the political aisle, right? That as politics change, the regulation ultimately changes as well, and so it's going to cut on all sides.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next witness in opposition, please come forward.
Madam Chairman and committee members, I'm Cheryl Schmidt, lobbyist for Families for Home Education. Homeschool freedoms in Missouri were hard fought, even to the point of class action lawsuit, which ordered the Missouri legislature to clarify the law concerning homeschooling. FHE has continued for 41 years to work to protect the inalienable right of the parents of Missouri to teach their own children without further state regulation and control. I'm testifying today in opposition of Senate Bills 1391 and 1392. FHE understands the Most Dollars program and the proposed expansion is well-intentioned, but it is dangerous to our Missouri homeschool freedoms. We are asking for a homeschool to be removed from the Most Scholars program. In other states, programs such as Most Scholars has led to universal ESAs and tax credit programs. In West Virginia, the very next session after passing the universal ESA, an egregious bill was introduced to put restrictions on all homeschoolers. In Arkansas, the next day after the universal ESA was passed, a bill was filed to require testing of all homeschoolers in Arkansas. Oklahoma passed a universal tax credit last year, and this session a bill has been filed to increase restrictions on all homeschoolers. FHE, while being neutral on parts of this program that do not affect homeschoolers, has opposed some of the egregious rules created by the Treasurer's Office, especially the rule to require everyone living in a home of a homeschool 18 years of age or older to submit to a background check. SB 1391 and 1392 removes a parent from the background check, but it does not necessarily take out the 18-year-old child that still living at home or possibly grandma living with the family out of the requirement. These two bills change the tax credit taxpayer tax credit a taxpayer contributes to the scholarship fund from a non-refundable tax credit to a refundable tax credit. A refundable tax credit is when a taxpayer can receive more money back from the state than their tax liability. At this point, direct government money becomes part of the Most Scholars program, and again, government money always requires more accountability. By state statute, a homeschool is defined as a school that provides private or religious-based education. Once a homeschool accepts government money, the school is no longer truly private. The school is then exposed to government control. Most scholars has proved this through required standardized testing, background checks, curriculum choices being determined or approved by the Educational Assistance Organization. We've seen in Alaska where they had curriculum and then they've changed it to where now you can't have any curriculum that has God in it, religious curriculum. As we have seen in other states, the bills filed here in Missouri, the Most Scholars program leads to fully government-funded ESAs and ESA-type tax credits. So this is a matter of a freedom issue. Over the years, FHE has helped thousands of parents across Missouri with information and advice on homeschooling through in-person workshops, seminars, Zoom classes, homeschool conventions, personal phone calls, etc. The cost of homeschooling can be very minimal, and Our Ladies can point those needing help to needed resources, many of which are free or minimal cost. A homeschool family does not need to resort to a government-funded program to homeschool. If you truly want to help homeschool families cut taxes and let us spend our own hard-earned money on what we decide is best for our family, FHE would respectfully request a no vote on SB 1391 and SB 1392 unless a homeschool is removed from the Missouri Scholars Program. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for this witness? Senator Razor.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
We had a nice conversation a few weeks ago, and I appreciate your testimony, and I think we agree on this, that your freedom relies on us staying out of it.
Yes, sir.
That's why we have that separation, and it's very important. And it's why someone who believes very differently than you can teach their kids what they want to teach.
Right.
And if you don't want a religious education, you come to a public school that's publicly funded, and you get a secular education and teach religion at home. That seems pretty basic and straightforward. Seems like to both of us, at least.
We just want to have our homeschool freedoms, to teach our children the way we want to do that, the way we see fit before God to do it, and without any kind of government control of our homeschool.
Thank you.
Any other questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you so much. Please be sure to leave a witness form. Next, in opposition to the bill, please come forward. We are ready when you are.
Hello. My name's Julie Thomas. I am a member of the Camden County Republican Central Committee. I was also appointed to the Missouri Learning Standards, History, grades 6 through 12, from House Bill 1490. I was a homeschooler in the 80s before many of you were born. So I've been fighting the educational establishment for a really long time. I also did some homeschooling with my children, and I also sent them through public school. I have identical twin boys who went through public school through the Common Core fiasco. I appreciate public school teachers. My grandfather is the one who gave us tenure. He wrote the test to get into the military academy. That was just recently changed. Public education has been a gift, but unfortunately, we have the Department of Education. And we do not need to be joining choice under the Department of Education. They are the ones ruining education for public schools and anywhere else. So whenever we started this fight in around 2011 with the Common Core battle here in the state of Missouri, what we found as members of the work groups was that the regulatory agencies captured everything under the feds and ignored state statute in every respect. Commissioner Margie Van Dieven, she might be a nice person, but she was under Commissioner Chris Nicastro and rolled out Common Core in all of our schools, and you all had never even heard the word. And yet, illegally, our public schools across the state of Missouri, every last one of them, were doing national standards, which is illegal. There has been an increase in abuse by these departments. And what my friends here that are, here representing their Christian schools do not understand is under this legislation, you are regulating their curriculum and you are giving them state curriculum. It isn't faith-based. That is a big lie. And we don't want the Romans teaching our children, yet we're going to just insert the Romans right in here under choice for homeschools, etc. I also need to state that I am representing 240 homeschool students in Camden County that are a part of co-ops. These aren't even all the students. My own homeschool child isn't a part of this co-op. But we are opposed to this bill because it is regulatory capture. It encapsulates all schools under the state. And what happens with the state regulatory agencies is they ignore you. You get termed out, and they follow federal standards because they take federal funding. And that's why when I was on the history standards for the state of Missouri, and I was working across the table from the appointees that were there for DESE, and what Margie Van Dieven did, they ignored Missouri learning standards. They continued to collude with international organizations to keep Common Core in our standards, and we very much have Common Core in the Missouri learning standards. And the MAP testings that went along with that at that time was SBAC. And SBAC was shown to be a terrible test, and it was an adaptive test. And so, when we're adding language to these bills that talk about testing, I'm sorry, the testing companies are not trustworthy companies. And another thing that you all maybe don't understand is that when you look at educational curriculum writers, who are these people? Who are these people that are naive religious institutions that want to take state funds and think, oh, I'm giving them a faith-based? Who are these people? These are international corporations. Pearson owns and creates 70% of all educational material worldwide. Worldwide. They are not an American company. Google is not an American company. And yet we have trusted our children to these curriculum and these tech companies. And we're saying, oh, we need more of this. No, we do not. These are not our friends. They are not pro-American. They are not pro-Bill of Rights. They're none of that. And they're definitely not faith-based. And the scripted curriculums that were given for most scholars are not your faith-based curriculum writers. These are secular institutions, secular companies. And that's what's required because it's under the state. And the state cannot fund religion. And I'm going to read a couple of statements that we wrote on our Republican Central Committee opposing all school choice and school vouchers. And let me tell you about Camden County. Sometimes we get a name up here like we're backwoods or we don't know what's going on. We were the first county to pass SAPA before the state of Missouri. We stood up to the ATF who wanted to come in and get data collection of our local Americans. We are fighting an establishment right now that is so anti-American through tech companies, through regulatory agencies, and they're not the boogeymen, as some people say. And one more thing before I read these. In 2015, the United States Congress passed the ESSA, which is the Every Student Succeeds Act. And if any of you are aware of No Child Left Behind, etc., this was put in place to replace them. Obama called it a Christmas miracle. Obama. Choice is his platform. That's his platform. It was a Christmas miracle. And under the ESSA, which was an 1,150-page bill, larger than Obamacare, we got choice, we got vouchers, we got private schools, we got homeschools. It's regulatory capture. This is a disaster waiting to happen. And in every other state, in Oklahoma, in Tennessee, that I network with through all the grassroots, they are now encapsulating all homeschools, not just those that want to take funds. But they are writing legislation in at the end of the matter to encapsulate all schools under, you know why? Because it's money. Because there's so many people homeschooling today. These test companies would really like to get them under these legislators' bills so they can shake hands with the regulatory departments behind your backs, create these tests, and you know what? They're going to get us on a data profile. It's history, people. I was on history standards. It's the way of the world. It's Tower of Babel recycled all over again. And this is another way to inch to inch their way into our lives. So, under the Camden County Republican Central Committee, whereas we believe government governs best when it governs least. Whereas vouchers, empowerment, scholarship accounts, educational savings account as government funded expand the hand of government over the people. We believe United States law and or the laws of the individual states shall not be subservient to the laws, religious regulations, and or cultural mores of the United Nations and or any other country or countries. Whereas vouchers, empowerment scholarships accounts, educational savings accounts, as government funded, et cetera, are inherently a goal of the United Nations and the World Economic Forum, as is evidenced by the Global Education Monitoring Report, the Sustainability Goals, and the Schools of the Future Report. Whereas we commend the efforts of elected Republican officials at the state level, we encourage their continued efforts to balance the budget and reverse the trend towards socialism and the high taxes that pay for it. Whereas vouchers, empowerment scholarship accounts, educational savings accounts expand the trend towards socialism and its redistribution of wealth. Our goals remain unthwarted in eliminating the Department of Education and rejecting all efforts to establish a national curriculum, thereby retaining control of schools at the local level, all schools. Whereas vouchers, empowering scholarship accounts, educational savings accounts, etc., establish a pre-approved curriculum and vendor selection. Let's say that again. It's a pre-approved curriculum and vendor selection, and place the Department of Education on an empowerment scholarship account school board. You have the Department of Education on the board of most scholars. The Department of Education that continued to give when I was sat in a meeting with Senator Emery about 8 years ago with Margie Van Dieven on the Coalition Against Common Core, there were 5 of us in the room, and we said, please do not give the privacy of our students to the federal government. She ignored us, and she did it anyways, because she's regulatory capture. They don't listen to state statute. They follow the feds because they're federally funded, 40% federally funded.
I want to thank you so much for your testimony.
Yes.
We have a number of other witnesses who are wanting to testify, and I believe that Senator Thompson-Rader had a question for you.
Yes.
Please proceed.
Thank you for your testimony. I just wanted to ask a question about your comment on this being President Obama's type of policies.
Yes.
Do you also know that President Trump has touted school choice and school reforms since he was in office and is currently
Did
doing
I say
that?
I was for that? Because Trump's for it?
No, but you were very clear on wanting everyone to think that this is an Obama policy. But this is also Trump's policies. Thank you.
So
Thank you
a
so much. I
Republican? Yeah.
appreciate your testimony for being here today. Does anyone else have any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next witness in opposition.
Lisa Panett here with Armorvine. We have been in contact with Robert Bortons, who's the CEO of Classical Conversations. And anyone that does any homeschooling pretty much knows who Classical Conversations is. But in Missouri, they currently have about 3,500 students, and they are adamantly opposed to government school choice. I want to address the refundable tax credits. If you're now going to give out money for those that are not going to go to these schools, or they're not going to spend as much, then I have a question if you're going to give this out also to the rest of the citizens of the state that are paying taxes, and senior citizens, anyone that wouldn't have children, are they going to get a tax credit? With the dollars will come the strings, and our Christian private schools and homeschools will be the same as the failing public schools. We have tests that no one can see, and we measure that. This is insane to have tests that no one can see, not the superintendent, not the teacher, not the parent. And yet this is how we're going to measure them with all the measurement bills that we have before the body this year. We're going to measure things we cannot see. That is insane. If you can't rein in the public schools because in your eyes they're failing and they're woke, then how is expanding this model to the successful Christian schools and successful homeschools going to solve that problem? The problem lies within this body that you can't get things achieved to actually rein in the public schools. So what you're going to do is expand this model, and then there's going to be strings for the Christian schools, as so many have already addressed. We're going to have what? The same standards. So they're going to have to meet, right? Because it's public education. So the public tax dollars, they're going to have the same tests. And I would ask our friends here that have the private schools, do you get to see your tests after you administer them? Do you get to see those tests? Do you get to measure those tests? I'm sure the answer is yes, because that's called sanity. Unlike the insanity of having tests that no one can see, and yet we're going to force measurement. And why are we forcing measurement? Because if we say the schools are failing, then more money can then be allocated to these programs of people that are millionaires and billionaires that are going to reap the benefits of that. I will also continue to say that we should be looking at protecting the taxpayers of this state, and with illegals that are potentially going to be flooded in. Right now, there's not a monetary incentive for illegals to just come to public schools. There's not a monetary incentive. When you do programs like this, there becomes a monetary incentive for illegals to be dumped into our state on the backs of the taxpayer. Who's going to look out for those people? Why are protections never built into these bills to protect the taxpayer against these things, against these very things that our governor goes down to the border and says that is a problem? So for all these reasons, we are opposed.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Is there any questions for this witness? Seeing none, next witness in opposition, please come forward.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and the committee. My name is David Lee Brush, and I'm here from Missouri Equity Education Partnership Action. And as I've said before in other committees on similar bills, we are opposed to this bill based on the idea that we believe firmly that public money should be spent in neighborhood public schools. We understand that special needs children have extraordinary challenges and parents have to make difficult decisions, and it is a life of sacrifice sometimes. But if we put, say, the $25 million that is going to expand in this bill into the public schools, then we would be able to improve the schools. Accountability has been an issue. I'd like to address a couple of points on that. I would be very interested to know, as a former ESL teacher, if any of the private schools that are educating our refugee students are taking the WIDA test. We are an WIDA test with access states, and we meet Title III provisions in the public schools, and they are extensive and they are challenging. I don't know if the private schools have that level of accountability. Parents have choices already. They can send their children to schools. And if you feel trapped in your district because of your zip code, then as a parent, you have a right to change your school. On an individual level, speaking as an individual now, I did just that with a group of parents in the Fox C6 district when my son was in school, and we realized they had like 3 AP classes. So the parents of the advanced and gifted students got together and said, this is not going to fly. We need more AP classes. My son was on track for Air Force Academy. He ended up opting out of that and going to a different school. but they wanted a lot of AP classes. So we worked for 4 years to get them. He had to take like 4 AP classes or 5 his senior year, but we got it changed. We found a way to change our school because that's what parents in public schools can do. We are our advocates, and there's nothing stopping us right now from doing that. And then finally, in answer to Senator Razor's, oh, he's not here. In answer to his question, yes, there is a Muslim school in Chesterfield. Many of our students from Bayless sent their children to that school when they became junior high school and high school kids because their parents wanted that traditional Islamic education. And as an equity organization, we're not sure if the ESAs would be they would be able to use that because of what Governor Parsons said in his speech. We firmly believe that religion needs to stay out of the public schools for the protection of the schools and for the religious institutions. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions of this witness? Seeing none, next witness in opposition.
Good morning, Senators. I'm David Clarich, today appearing on behalf of Family Covenant Ministries. About 2,200 families statewide that are home educators. Had the opportunity to speak with Senator Trent and many of you over the years. We would like to respectfully request that you remove home educators from this legislation.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for this witness? Senator Beck.
Thank you. And I know we've had a lot of conversations on this, but so you're in the original bill, right? The homeschool is in the original bill, and you basically want to be removed from the entire program.
We do.
You do. And the reason I guess that is we've heard a lot of this today is somehow folks think that they should be able to get public money and not have any strings attached.
Exactly.
So whoever pays the piper's apt to call the tune is one of the things we hear. And I think it's a very fiscally conservative thing to say that wherever our money goes, taxpayer money goes, to support something, we should know where it's going, what it's going for, and how it's being spent. Currently, I think they can buy TV, a bunch of different things. If you look at the original program, it can go for things that don't even actually affect education.
The question is, as you indicated earlier, accountability.
Yeah.
And the question is for us is that, our concern has always been that when you entangle home educators with any governmental program at the state or federal level, there is the obligation of government to ensure that the monies that are spent, there's a degree of accountability. We as home educators don't want to have that entanglement because many of those entanglements through policies or regulations then encumber our ability to do our job, and that is to teach our children. And we have seen that as Families for Home Education testified earlier this morning, that throughout the United States when this has been done, and we fully anticipate that will be the case here. And it already is, that there are limitations on curricula, there's limitations or de facto registration. Our statute, contrary to other testimony you heard earlier, is that our statute under 167031 is the best in the United States. It is an outstanding statute allowing parents to teach their children. We do not want to encumber that legislation. We don't want to jeopardize that legislation. We would ask that we be removed.
Yeah, and the reason why it was drawn up originally was to be separated out of the public school system, separated from the government to allow families to be able to teach their kids the way they want to. But you can't have it both ways. I don't think you can have money going into it and not. So I mean, I respect your position on this, but I just wanted to make sure that was clear that you understand that if money does come in there, that will change.
And that's correct, Senator, and that's the purpose for my testimony today. I'd only like to add that we as a homeschooling community, and I've had conversations with FHE and other homeschooling groups in the House yesterday as testimony similar to these bills was presented, that we are uniformly, in unanimity, in opposition to our inclusion in these bills. And we would just respectfully request, let our people go.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any further questions of this witness? Seeing none, any further testimony in opposition? Please come forward on the record, Adam.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Adam Rayford, submitting testimony on behalf of the Missouri Retired Teachers Association, St. Louis Public School District, and the cooperating schools of Greater Kansas City. Just wanted to submit testimony in opposition to both bills.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, anyone further to testify in opposition?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Otto Fajan on behalf of Missouri NEA. We'd also speak in opposition to 1391 and 1392 if they're being presented contemporaneously. Great discussion. The sponsor, I think, has brought forward a bill that relates to the ESA program, but clearly from the questions of the committee, the testimony of witnesses on both sides, there's an awareness that there's kind of a connection to a lot of things that are going on. We're sensitive to the fact that having standardized testing and trying to standardize kids, our educators, our kids feel that, the weight of that coming down. That's something that is affecting how things work in public schools. When the discussion talks about, how do we have kind of a supervision of instruction, we need a process in 2024 that actually makes sense. There's going to be change in higher education. There's going to be change in K-12 in the succeeding decades, and that system needs to be much more aligned to what's going to be needed in the future, and that needs to probably be driven as much as possible from the ground up, because that's kind of a system can be more nimble. And so that needs to be part of the conversation. We also would remind the committee that the task that's given to you when you become a legislator, that you swear an oath to under the Constitution, that first job after you pay the debts is to make sure that you establish and maintain the public schools. One of our concerns about these types of programs, when we see significant amounts of public resource going to private schools in other states, in programs in states where they're further down the road, is the diminution of what you're able to do for your primary constitutional duty, that is in public education. Florida is much further downstream, and it's amazing. We are now reached a point where the teacher salaries in Florida are lower than in Missouri, which was never the case historically. And so that should be a caution to the committee. We would also ask the committee, before you move on this legislation, to unpack the implementation of this statute in comparison to what the statute actually calls for. There might be a question as to whether it's permissible, because there's an expectation that it is neutral with regard to the establishment of religion. But from our reading, and some comments have said it's not easy to get all the information, but from our understanding of the implementation through the existing EAOs, it is essentially a choice granted to certain students to attend religious schools only, and that may call into question whether it is essentially neutral on the establishment of education. Those are our comments to the committee. We'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none, the chair has
Thank you,
one.
Madam Chair.
You mentioned Florida. How is Florida's educational attainment for their students and compared to Missouri?
It's all over the map in a sense. I mean, if you look at NAEP scores, Florida and Missouri are both, like most states, near the middle of the pack. It's easy. It's not easy to unpack that in a short period of time in a way that's meaningful.
Well, I would welcome any data you have that you could bring by my office, then that would further answer that question if you're not able to today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any other questions? Seeing none. Anyone else here in opposition, please come forward.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members of the committee, Mike Harris on behalf of the Missouri State Teachers Association go on record in opposition to both of these bills. We all know that the number one most important factor in student achievement is our teachers in front of the classroom, and we believe that investing in those teachers is where we should be investing if we're really concerned about student achievement. Thank you.
Thank you for your concise testimony, asking for more resources. That is consistent with all the testimony I hear from you. Is there any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else here in opposition?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brant Shields on behalf of the Missouri School Boards Association. Just want to go on record in opposition to this legislation. MSBA just fundamentally opposes the use of public funds for voucher programs, and also in 1392 specifically, the expansion of charter schools without a vote of the people in those counties on whether to expand those charter schools.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there any questions for this witness? Senator Beck.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, appreciate your position with this Missouri School Board Association, and I spent 9 years on the school board, and I believe one of the things when we had to, I should say, we got the opportunity to get our 16 hours at that time of training to be on that, which was required to be on the Missouri School Board, and I think it's more than that now.
18 and a half.
18 and a half. But one of the things that we discussed there and kind of was brought to light today is that as a public school, we don't turn anyone away.
Correct.
We educate every kid that comes to our doors. We don't get to pick and choose.
Correct.
And what we heard today is these schools get to pick and choose who they educate.
That is how I interpret the statute, yes.
Yeah, and we've actually heard witnesses say today that their school does choose. They can decide whether this kid or person is qualified to go to their school.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we find that? Don't you find that that we're taking taxpayer dollars and saying that it's not applied to everyone? It's only applied to the ones that you decide to choose. So I guess I do agree with the motto now saying it is school choice because the school gets to choose the student.
You know, I kind of liken it to, when we talk about public goods versus private goods. We pay taxes in the state to build roads.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many roads that I may never drive on. But it would seem odd to me that if suddenly my taxpaying dollars were to pay for someone to put a private driveway into their own house.
Right.
And that choice that I don't get, and they get to choose how they want their driveway to look and all these different things, that is not something that I as a taxpayer have accountability for. And by that same token, in these particular scenarios, you're correct that through this program there can be admission requirements set, there can be different income requirements set. That and what we've seen in other states that have expanded voucher programs like this, we have seen almost runaway tuition increases. Specifically, it seems to try to capture as much state money as possible while also making sure to, if not even necessarily in saying it out loud in policy, but in practice, actually making sure to deny certain students into private schools. So yes, private schools through these voucher programs do get to choose in some ways what students they want to take.
And we've seen this in other states. We've seen Oklahoma's blown a hole in their budget. We've seen this going on in Arizona for a long time. Louisiana has been a model for school choice forever, and it's like a disaster. So I hate to see us go down that road. I would be open to a lot of these different things if you would say, hey, you're going to have the exact same accountability measures here. You're going to do the exact. Then I would have no argument against any of these things. You would, you have an elected board of the community that serves the community, and when you spend that money, there is you know where it goes.
Mm-hmm. And if you
we
don't
don't
like
know
where
any
it
of that.
goes,
We
then
don't know any of that.
You can go speak to your school board, and you can choose to run for office or to elect other people to that school board if you don't like how your school is being governed.
And one of the things, I don't even know if it's ever been discussed here, but what if this kid goes to one of these schools with the voucher money, and then they're asked to leave in the middle of the school year? Does the money come back?
That's a good question. I would need to see how that would work with the weighted average daily attendance and how that works with the census date. I will admit I am not a formula expert, so I would need to ask my
Do they do the weighted average attendance in this program?
No, there's no. I don't believe WADA is.
So we don't even know if they're attending the school.
Yeah, I guess you probably wouldn't.
Yeah, and obviously the treasurer doesn't know that because he wasn't able to give me any of this information. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any other questions for this witness? Seeing none, anyone here in opposition? Is there anyone here for informational purposes only? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on Senate Bills 1391 and 1392, as well as concluding our hearing this morning.